The history of World War II is just packed with stories of secret weapons. But I guarantee you, very few are as spectacularly weird and as spectacularly unsuccessful as this one. Today, we are diving into the absolutely incredible story of the Great Panjandrum.
I mean, just look at this thing. Seriously, it looks like it rolled right out of some wild steampunk fantasy, right? But believe it or not, this was a very real, top-secret weapon designed by the British military for a mission of absolute importance.
And that's the real question, isn't it? How on earth did a top-secret project, something designed to smash through Nazi defenses, turn into this terrifying, uncontrollable beast that literally sent its own creators running for their lives? Well, let's find out. Okay, to really get why this invention even exists, you have to understand the problem they were facing. It's 1943, the Allies are gearing up for the invasion of Europe, but standing in their way is Hitler's Atlantic Wall, a truly massive system of coastal fortifications. And we're not talking about small barriers here. We're talking about solid concrete walls, 10 feet high, designed to stop any landing force dead in its tracks. And not only were they high, they were also 7 feet thick. Getting through that was going to require an insane amount of force. In fact, the engineers crunched the numbers and figured out it would take over 1 ton of explosives just to blast a hole big enough for a single tank to get through. The big challenge was, how do you even get that massive bomb to the wall when you're landing on a heavily defended beach? And this is where our story takes a wild turn. Enter the Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development. Now, this was a British department that was kind of famous for coming up with, well, let's call them unconventional ideas. And their solution to the Atlantic Wall problem was about as unconventional as it gets. They decided to call it the Panjandrum. And the concept, at least in theory, was brutally simple. It's a giant, rocket-powered wheel packed to the brim with explosives. The plan was to launch it from a landing craft, have it speed across the beach, all on its own, and then smash right into the enemy's defenses. Boom! The sheer ambition behind this thing was just staggering. Okay, so you've got 2 massive 10-foot diameter steel wheels. In between them, a central drum packed with 4,000 pounds of explosives. And the whole thing was going to be propelled by a bunch of cordite rockets strapped to the wheels. They even predicted it would hit 60 miles per hour. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? As it turns out, pretty much everything could go wrong. The whole project was moved to a public beach called Westward Ho for testing. And right from the very first trial, the massive gap between the idea on paper and the reality on the beach, well, it became disastrously clear. So, in the very first test, they were cautious, right? They only attached a handful of rockets. But the second it launched, some of the rockets on one of the wheels just failed to ignite. And the whole machine immediately lost control and just careened sideways down the beach. This was a very bad sign. And this is where the logic of the so-called fixes gets both hilarious and terrifying. So rockets are failing on one side, right? Their solution? Just add more rockets, way more, over 70 of them in total. Of course, that just made it even more unstable. So then they added a third wheel to try and stabilize it. When that didn't work, they tried to steer it with these heavy steel cables, which it immediately snapped. Every single fix just made the Panjandrum more powerful and more uncontrollable. So, let's fast forward to the final test, January 1944. After weeks of tinkering, the team actually felt confident enough to show off the Panjandrum to a whole group of high-ranking military officials. This was it. This was their last chance to prove the concept actually worked. So picture the scene. You've got admirals, you've got generals, the brass hats, all gathered on the beach, watching from what they thought was a safe distance. The stakes really couldn't have been any higher. At first, it actually seemed to go okay, but then a rocket clamp gave way. Then another one. The Panjandrum started to lurch ominously. And according to an eyewitness photographer there that day, he looked up from his camera to see Panjandrum shedding live rockets in all directions, heading straight for him. As a photographer, and all these top military officials literally ran for their lives, diving into barbed wire for cover, the Panjandrum turned back towards the sea, crashed onto the sand, and just disintegrated in a series of violent explosions. The project was, not surprisingly, scrapped right there on the spot. But you see, the story doesn't actually end there. After this absolutely spectacular failure, the Panjandrum started to take on a whole new life. Not as a weapon, but as a legend. So, what was this thing really all about? The common view is that it was a genuine, though, deeply flawed attempt at some new engineering. But another really fascinating theory has popped up over the years that the whole project was actually an elaborate hoax. The idea is that it might have been part of Operation Fortitude, a massive deception campaign to make the Germans think the Allies were developing these kinds of superweapons to invade at Pas-de-Calais, drawing all their attention away from the real target, Normandy. Whatever its true purpose was, the Panjandrum's legend has only grown over time. It's been featured in movies, classic TV shows like Dad's Army, and even anime. It's been rebuilt multiple times, including for the 65th anniversary of D-Day, where the replica, well, it also failed. It seems some ideas are just destined for disaster. And that really leaves us with the big question. Was the Panjandrum just one of history's most comical military failures? Or was it actually a brilliantly successful piece of misdirection that played a part in winning the war? Now that is something worth thinking about.